Welcome to the week that was, but we mostly wish it wasn't, for the week ending October 17th, 2025. This is a weekly roundup of the highlights and lowlights of campus anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. This week I had about 40 stories to choose from. If something's happening in your neck of the woods, please be sure to let me know. I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. I am a professor. Please don't hate me. For more about me and my work, visit andrewpessin.com. For all the details of today's stories and loads more stories, follow me on X at Andrew Pessin. Let's get to the news. The big news and wonderful news this week, obviously, was the return of the living hostages. I personally am choosing to wear the yellow ribbon until everyone comes home. We do start with an additional bit of good news. At Yale University, an anti-Israel resolution in the student government against Friends of the IDF was defeated this week by a vote of 12 to 12 to 4. Though one must admit that the bar is fairly low when the good news is simply that something bad did not happen, and in any case, it was a tie vote. Also, bit of good news at Cornell University, an anti-Israel professor there who was in hot water for having excluded an Israeli student from his class has chosen to retire rather than serve the 2-semester suspension that had been levied against him. But meanwhile, the Israeli student who levied the complaint has apparently since been doxxed and harassed. That student's name was leaked to The Nation magazine and then onto social media and the Cornell student newspaper, and misleading negative portrayals were being spread, asserting the student essentially brought the situation upon himself. At the University of Rochester, in fact, we have a bunch of Students for Justice in Palestine news this week, SJP. The University of Rochester, 6 SJP students are launching a hunger strike, demanding that the university recognize, quote, genocide and, of course, divest from Israel. University of Houston, SJP, not to be outdone, is also declaring a hunger strike until divestment. Quote, these students won't eat until divestment, so that will be interesting to watch. Harvard University, an article was published this week giving a deep dive into the institutional anti-Semitism, specifically at the Divinity School there. And also in the Boston area at Tufts University, there's a campaign that has been launched to have four professors who have been peddling famine propaganda sanctioned, especially in light of a new report that the Gaza famine claims were based on fabricated data. New York City. Numerous groups, including student groups from New York colleges, participated in a vigil yesterday for now slain Hamas leader Sinwar. And at UCLA out on the West Coast, despite being suspended, SJP held a large pro-Hamas rally this week, violating rules about masking, openly calling for intifada, honoring, quote, martyrs, i.e. Hamas terrorists. And so far as I can see, the administration has not responded or done anything. The University of North Carolina, SJP there held a tribunal against Zionists, condemning the university's affiliation with anyone they consider to be a Zionist and therefore complicit in genocide, and of course demanding divestment from Israel. Bowdoin College and New York City, although Israel-hating mayoral candidate Mamdani boycotted J Street when he was leading his SJP chapter at Bowdoin back in the day because of the wide-standing anti-normalization policies anti-Israel groups have against anyone supportive of Israel, J Street still somehow finds a way to enthusiastically support him for the candidacy. Lewis and Clark College, a display at Lewis and Clark honoring the then 48 hostages held in Gaza, was recently vandalized multiple times, and Jewish students there were harassed and threatened. In addition, cleaning staff interrupted 3 individuals who were spray painting the outside walls of a number of academic buildings, but the individuals were masked, of course, and left the scene without being identified. In the frozen north up in Canada, the McGill University Association of University Teachers, their faculty union there, passed a resolution this week to endorse the academic and cultural boycott of Israel and to call on McGill administration to implement the boycott of Israeli academic institutions. This is at least the 21st Canadian faculty union or academic association to vote in support of BDS since 2023. And in the UK, not to be outdone, at the London School of Economics, very prestigious institution, the Feminist Society there is working hard to cancel an event about the sexual violence of Hamas on October 7th. Imagine that, a feminist society canceling an event about sexual violence. In the lawsuits and legal department now, American Muslims for Palestine, an article was published this week giving a pretty deep dive into the ongoing federal lawsuit against that group for harassing Jews and funding campus hostility against Jews. CUNY Hunter College. A federal judge has recommended that a Jewish professor proceed with her Title VII anti-Semitism lawsuit against the university, having adequately alleged that CUNY is responsible for harassment of Jews at that campus. Cal State Northridge is also facing a lawsuit, a wrongful termination lawsuit from an employee who alleges that he was fired, quote, because of his political views against anti-Semitism and advocacy on behalf of Jewish students and faculty, end quote. One more bit of SJP news this week at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. SJP there launched an encampment outside the university library this week. Police moved in almost immediately, dismantled the site, and removed protesters. One commentator asked, "Is this the shortest encampment ever?" Very possibly. The university then responded by suspending SJP after repeated rules violations. In the very disturbing students openly endorsing violence category this week at Swarthmore, the SJP there put out a social media post prominently featuring a flag from the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, as part of a fundraiser request there. The PFLP is, of course, an internationally proscribed terrorist group. Worse, National SJP organization put out a call for revenge this week against, quote, collaborators in response to the killing of Gazan influencer Saleh al-Jafarawi, also known as Mr. Fafo for people who follow those things. They mourned the death of the influencer in clashes between Hamas and one of the local clans' militia there, branding the latter a Zionist proxy. What's going on here, of course, is that this is after already widespread reports that Hamas is murdering lots and lots of people. Well, possibly hundreds of Gazans have been murdered by Hamas, and SJP is openly supporting that, calling the people being murdered by Hamas collaborators. In the K through 12 department, Illinois secondary and elementary school educators are required to go through state-mandated anti-racist training, as is true in many places these days. As of this past year, teachers were required to undergo a, quote, racism-free schools training every 2 years. However, their mandated anti-racist training features Hamas supporters in keffiyehs, and the speaker leading the training believes that being against Hamas, protesting Hamas, is, quote, rooted in racism and Islamophobia. In the naughty students department in the United Kingdom, once again, an Oxford University student was filmed this past week openly calling to put Zios in the ground. He came up with a catchy chant to put Zios in the ground. He was subsequently suspended from Oxford, then subsequently arrested, and just yesterday it was reported that police were removing firearms and ammunition from his house. In the naughty professors department, or staff in some cases, in Canada, Concordia University, a mathematics professor there openly calls to kill all Zionists. In a social media post, she wrote, "My hardcore Zionist colleagues, parentheses, kill them all, as they say, dot, dot, dot," and then went on to criticize them. Her social media is filled with loads of the standard anti-Israel talking points. In Australia, the University of Sydney has suspended a staff member after a viral video showed her verbally assaulting Jewish students and teachers during an on-campus holiday celebration. She said things like the following: "A Zionist is the lowest form of rubbish. Zionists are the most disgusting thing that ever walked this earth." She identifies herself then as an indigenous Palestinian and continues hurtling anti-Semitic insults, calling the group child killers, "You filthy Zionists, you colonized us." Well, that's the news, unfortunately. Tune in next week to see what fresh horrors next week will bring. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Pessin at andrewpessin.com, hoping that everyone manages to keep it together until next time.